Senate Appropriations Committee to order. I think we may go a little bit out of order from these books. Dan, we're going to start with you on House Bill 20.
So
whenever you're ready.
So instead of doing this pile of books
Yeah.
here, I thought we could do this one spreadsheet that Adam
Yeah.
has for you. For the record, Dan Hogg, State Budget Director. So this is House Bill 20. This is the ARPA. And this is essentially a reappropriate. And the reason that is because just to remind you, the federal rules said that all of this money had to be allocated, which basically means spoken for, by the end of calendar year 2024. So we're past that date. So we can't move this money around. We're pretty much locked in where we are right now. So as the chairman said, this is basically now just a reappropriation bill. So we are just keeping these in here as these projects. Most of these are big capital projects as these are spent down as the projects are completed. The spreadsheet you have are just places where it changed for reasons other than it's just spent more money. Most of these items are different than they were last year because they've spent a couple $1 million since then, and we've lowered their approach by that and left in what they need to spend. These are ones that have changed for reasons other than just they're spending money down as they go. So on the spreadsheet, line 1, the DED International Flight Incentive Program. This program, departments worked with the airlines and that, and this program just is not going to go. There was not interest to do this, and so this money is not going to be used. The Cape Girardeau Career and Technical Education Center, again, this is just a lapse. The department's worked with those entities, and they're not going to need to spend this money. The career centers, again, the department has worked with the career centers that this money was going to go for, and there's $400,000 that's going to be not needed and unspent. The next one is, if you remember, when we did the House Bill 20, we put some folks in from IT to do the IT projects. Some of those folks now can be transferred back to the regular IT budget. We didn't put new folks in. Most of the people we had were just transferred out of the core IT budget to ARPA to be paid out of ARPA funds. A lot of their work has been done. Not all of the people are being paid or being put back, but 43 FTE are being put back into the House Bill 5 core. The Wright County 911 Center, again, this is just money that the department has worked with Wright County and they're not going to need. The Department of Ag has worked with the biofuel infrastructure incentives. Again, they're going to lapse about $1 million, so we don't need that. DNR electrical repairs to courthouses in Jefferson County, it's a lapse of about $112,000. On the next page, OA purchasing, that's 2 FTE that we can cut with the ARPA that we put in for purchasing issues with ARPA. The next one is the $150 million. This is just the sort of safety valve we have in case we get to the end and there is money that's not spent. And again, we can't take it and do a new project because the Fed said we had to have it all allocated by the end of calendar year 2024. We put in $150 million that we could put this money into the foundation formula and spend it in lieu of general revenue, so we would just save general revenue. Right now, we don't expect any to be used. The money that we're lapsing here will basically offset the over-appropriation of ARPA, so we think with what we're lapsing here, there's a couple of $1 million we're probably over-appropriated, but we think we can manage through that over the next several years. But if for some reason, say a big project or something decided they couldn't go forward, we could then have this to put money into the foundation formula to save general revenue. So just to be clear, this will not increase spending to the foundation formula. This will just save us GR. Probably won't be used until close to the end of calendar year 26 when we see if anything is actually out there. Right now, we don't anticipate using it. The next one is we put a one-time transfer into our facilities maintenance and reserve fund of about $14.5 million. That's a one-time reduction. We had to put in a little bit of GR because there are still some people paid out of the ARPA bill, and obviously there's not ARPA to do the pay increase. We have ARPA in for their core salaries, but there was not money in ARPA available for their pay increases, the statewide pay increase. This is some people in accounting, purchasing, and some of the IT folks that we didn't transfer back. And then the last one is just how much we've spent. So this is various projects throughout the bill. This is how much they've spent down over the course of this last year, and we've reduced those appropriations by that. But most of those still have appropriations left to go ahead and spend. So that is House Bill 20. Happy to take any questions. And also, if there are specific projects in there, happy to talk about those offline with you. If you want to give me a call, I can walk you through where any specific project is.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any questions from the committee? Yeah.
If I could talk you offline about that one in Cape and just kind of find out what happened there, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
again, everybody was on the same page, but
Okay.
yeah, I can talk to you about that one.
All right, anything else from the committee? Doesn't look like it. Dan, thank you for running through House Bill 20. All right, next up we'll do Office of Administration.
Good morning, everybody. Hannah Swan, Manage Budget and Legislation for OA.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'd just like to maybe make a brief introduction. I know most of you, but there's a couple of people that may not know me. My name is Ken Zellers. I'm the Commissioner of the Office of Administration. Been with the state for 7 years, 4 years with the Department of Revenue, 3 years with the Office of Administration. Before joining the state, I was a global director for Anheuser-Busch InBev. I was born and raised in Missouri. I'm married and have 2 beautiful children. And like Hannah said, she's going to be presenting the budget today, but I'd also like to make a couple of quick introductions in the audience here for those who have made it. I know there was an accident on 54, I'm told, so some of them may be held up in that. But I'd like to introduce Caroline Coulter. She's our Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel. Stacy Neal, she's our Director of Accounting. Dan Hogg, you already met with Dan Hogg. Brian Jansen, he's our Director of Facilities Management, Design, and Construction. Crystal Wessing, she's our General Services Director. Becky Britsky, Acting Department of Personnel Director. Karen Boger, she's our Purchasing Director. And John Laurent, he is our Chief Information and Data Officer. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with Hannah.
Do we have a preference on the order of the books that we go through?
The book that I have in front of me says employee benefits.
You want to start with employee benefits? We could do that. One sec. Okay, for employee benefits, most of these sections, there are 2 sections. One is the transfer section where we consolidate all of the different funding sources into one fund, and then there's a payment section where we actually pay it out. Employee benefits for state employees are paid from the same fund that an employee's salary is paid from. So when we're paying Mosers or MCHCP, we'll consolidate all of the different funding sources into one fund using the transfer section, and then there will be a payment section. And I can go through. The chairman requested that we primarily hit new decision items and core changes, but if there's anything that I miss or that you want me to go back to or that I don't explain well, feel free to ask me to go back at any point. On page 1, there is just an overview. Page 2 is our flexibility requests. We're not asking for any new flexibility this year. Page 3 is the Social Security Medicare taxes section. On page 8, there's a new decision item. This is related to the new Medicare and Social Security taxes that we'll need to transfer as a result of new PS that's in the GovRec budget, the pay plan, etc. And then on page 20 is the payment section for that transfer. This is where we'll pay out the additional Social Security and Medicare taxes associated with new PS that's in the FY26 governor's recommended budget. Page 27, well, page 22 is the beginning of the Mosers section where we transfer all of the funding that's for Mosers, and we're asking for an increase on page 27. This is additional transfer authority that's needed as a result of the state employee contribution rate increasing from 28.75% to 30.25%. And then there's a corresponding new decision item on page 30. That's the additional payment authority for Mosers as a result of that contribution rate increasing. Actually, I might have said that wrong. Sorry, page 30 is the additional Mosers transfer authority as a result of new PS in the budget, and then 37 and 40 are the payment sections associated with the rate increase payment and the new PS associated with new PS that's in the governor's recommended budget. The Missouri Consolidated Healthcare Plan section is on page 77. That's the core transfer section, and again, we're asking for an increase. On page 83, this is additional authority for the Missouri Consolidated Healthcare Plan. This is based on a trend that is actuarially projected healthcare increases that they're seeing in the plan. And then on page 93 is the payment authority for the increase in the projected annual healthcare costs for Missouri Consolidated Healthcare Plan. And then on page 117 is the workers' compensation section. There's a new decision item request on 122. There's also a supplemental increase that we're requesting related to workers' compensation. This is primarily being driven by increases in healthcare costs. And if there are any questions, that is employee benefits. Okay. Going to OA Book 1, or are we going to real estate? Okay. OA, Office of Administration, Book 1. There is a department overview on page 1, a department placemat on page 2. There's a financial summary on page 4 that breaks down the executive budget summary by division for OA. Page 5 is the first new decision item. This is the governor's recommended pay plan that would give a 1% salary increase for every 2 years of service for state employees. The America 250 Missouri Commission, on 39, last year that was appropriated as one-time funding. On page 44, we are requesting that that authority be added back. The America 250 Commission is in charge of planning the celebration for America's 250th anniversary. That will take place in July 26th, and so that funding is going to be needed again in FY 26 to get us to July of 26. On page 54, last year, the Division of Accounting, their core PS was cut by $100,000. The Division of Accounting typically is very tight on PS, and they're requesting that this be added back this year. Page 56. When the Movers module goes live for finance, we're going to need additional staffing to help with both. There are going to be functionality that gets, as there are updates to the system, they have to regression test those functionality updates. They're going to have to work with state employees, set up a help desk. The system's going to be new. There's going to be some staffing that's needed associated with just the go live of a brand new system and all of that's involved with that. Page 56. Budget and Planning is requesting some additional E&E in their budget. They use a variety of vendors and national associations to get critical state and economic data. Over the past 10, 15 years, they haven't gotten an increase in their E&E, but they've seen increases in those subscription costs, and they're requesting additional funding be added to their E&E budget to be able to help cover some of those costs. Page 68, Budget Director Salary Adjustment. This is a request to provide a salary increase for the state budget director. Basically, the budget director has a large number of responsibilities similar to a department director, and we also have a budget director that could retire at any time, and we want to be able to attract a good candidate whenever that happens. Page. It's for the next guy. All right, page 82, Citizen Portal Maintenance. Actually, let me go back 1 second. On IT Core, I will just point out sorry, I'm skipping a core change. On page 63, there is a core reallocation that was originally from the census prep section to their ongoing licensing for redistricting software. We core reallocated to budget and planning's regular section to pay those ongoing licensing and software costs. All right, I apologize. All right, now moving to page 79 on ITSD's operating core. I just want to point out a couple of core reallocations there. Typically in our ITSD budget, we have a lot of difficulty forecasting a year out whether we're going to be, how much time our IT people are going to be working on, say, DESI projects or OA projects or higher ed projects. And so all of our software application developers time code, and their funding, every payroll gets paid based on where they are actually working. So as that changes year to year, we do try to core reallocate based on where we're actually spending. So there are some core reallocations throughout the IT core sections just to right size where we think we'll be spending that funding in the upcoming FY26 budget. Page 82 is the citizen portal maintenance section. In the ARPA budget, one of the projects that was funded was a $126 million project for digital government transformation. That was funded, obviously, with one-time funding from ARPA. When we originally requested that funding, we did communicate that there were going to be some ongoing costs that would need to be picked up with general revenue when ARPA funding was no longer available. This is the request to pick up those ongoing costs with GR. There is a breakdown on page 88 that lists out all of the different components of this request. ServiceNow is the platform that it's built on that has an ongoing subscription cost. MuleSoft is something that allows the data to move seamlessly between different systems. That has ongoing costs. And you can read through all of those if you would like to. Then on page 89, the security key management system. This is $1.4 million that we're requesting for a centralized key management system. This would automate the process of changing encryption keys that allow different systems to talk to each other. Right now, this is being handled very manually by state staff. This would automate that process of changing the encryption keys so that different systems could share data and that we would be in compliance with regulatory standards. On page 92, this was a core section for statewide customer service. This was originally a pilot program in FY23 that was added with one-time funding, and then it continued being added with one-time funding. This is a program to allow all of the state agencies to provide ways for citizens to provide them with feedback regarding their programs in real time. On page 97, we're requesting that that be added back. Again, as this program has only ever been funded with one-time funding. This program is allowing citizens to provide direct feedback to state agencies in real time so that they can make changes and make improvements based on the data that they're getting back. Page 105 is the DESI Foundation formula rewrite.
All right, hold on, I'm going to jump in since nobody else will with all this IT fun stuff.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, unless you want to, Senator Fitzwater. Well, I mean, just keep it somewhat brief, but go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any results of this this customer service thing? I'm sorry, and I'm new to the committee, so you gotta give me a little bit of grace. Some people will give me some grace, others won't. But what are the results of the customer service piece here? Do you have any data on that?
Yes, Senator, we do, but I'd like to back up a little bit and kind of familiarize everybody with exactly what the system does. So, over in the past years, we've heard comments about how do we would roll something out. We would say, well, how do we know that's what the citizen customer really wants? How do we know what kind of service they're receiving? And in the past, we had to use systems like SurveyMonkey, or you had to use email with voting buttons and just various types of surveys that may or may not have been confidential. So what we did was we embarked on this journey to actually find a software, and it's the Qualtrics software is what we're using, that you can easily customize the survey to suit the situation. And you ask for some data and some results. One example would be like this year at the state fair. In the past, we would have had to wait till the state fair was over in order to get information if we wanted to make changes. Are people enjoying the fair? What are the highlights? This year, we actually had about 50,000 people respond to the state fair by the third or fourth day. That information is accurate, it's timely, and it's reliable, and it allows us to make adjustments in the process, in this case, in the state fair, as the fair was actually going on. We've got results from Department of Revenue where they're interviewing, not interviewing, but surveying people in the license offices, getting feedback from the license offices. Economic development, we're using it to survey after, what were those funds called? Yeah, apply for grants, so we have information on that. So what the tool does is it actually provides a means for us to get accurate and timely and reliable data back to make decisions based on that. So there's a lot more examples if you'd like to get some that we're using. I believe 15 of the 17 departments are now using it as a survey tool. Plus the quarterly pulse survey that we use around the state to get feedback from the employees is also powered by the same survey and the same tool.
Okay, the last two things were, I mean, it's 33 million. I need to wrap my mind around it. So if somebody from OA can just come and we can talk about some of these, I would love to have that meeting.
Are you wanting to go back to the citizen portal request?
I don't want to take too much time asking my questions when I could probably just sit in a room with you all and wrap my mind around it. So
So you want us to get a meeting set up?
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, happy to do that. Okay. Page 105 is the DESI Foundation Formula Rewrite New Decision Item. This is a project that went through our Cabinet IT Governance Council. It's requesting funding to replace DESI's current foundation formula calculation system. DESI is responsible for distributing over $5 billion in state funds to all of the public schools and charter districts statewide. That right now, it's a lot of different calculations, a lot of different data. It's difficult, it's manual. Anytime there are changes to the system that need to be made, there's only a couple of different people that can even make changes to the current system. It's becoming critical for that system to be replaced. On page 113 is Department of Higher Ed and Workforce Development FAMOUS upgrade. This is the system that Higher Ed and Workforce Development uses for administering student financial aid. It's old Java-based technology. There's been a lot of changes in post-secondary education since that system was originally developed. Right now, their system only really deals well with a traditional 16-week semester, and anything outside of that is very challenging, both for the staff that are administering the financial aid system and the students that are having to deal with that system. And that funding would allow for that system to be replaced. Page 139 is Department of Natural Resources State Revolving Fund System. Right now, the system that they use, it tracks financial and project data for their loan and grant programs. The system that they have will not interface with the new mover system. It's outdated.
Are you kidding me?
It's an old system. It won't interface with the new technology that we're doing. The new system.
So our new $200 million system isn't going to interface with this one?
It's a very old system that
Yeah.
they have. They need it to be updated. They need it to be.
It's kind of like when that Chinese spy balloon came over and we didn't have the technology to track down something that was moving so slow because all of our fighter jets were too fast. God.
Right now, there's a lot of manual things that they're doing behind the scenes that could be more efficient if they had a system that they could automate some of the tasks. Page 153. This is funding to This is funding to support the ongoing licensing and support for the professional registration's new e-licensing system. MoPro was implemented with ARPA funds. They need ongoing funds. This will be paid through professional registration fees. This is an other fund request to support the ongoing licensing for that system. Page 170 is the nurse call system for the Missouri Veterans Commission. They run 7 skilled veterans homes. They're required to have a resident call system to receive communications from individuals. Right now, the system they have has old parts that are no longer available because the system is so outdated. This is another other fund request where they have funding available to replace their nurse call system. This includes both the cost for replacing the software and training costs for staff to utilize it. On page 173 is another request from the Veterans Home from their dedicated other fund. This is to replace the current electronic health records tool that they're using. The system that they are currently using, they utilize or they purchased off a NASPO contract, but it's again outdated. They don't have the ability to performance manage the vendor and the system don't meet their needs, so they would like to go out to bid for a new system. That takes us to mansion donations on page 270.
What department was that again that has to go out to bid for a new system?
The Missouri Veterans Commission under DPS.
Okay, Veterans Commission.
Yeah. Senator Black, are you done?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Hannah, we're done with Hannah.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Senator Probst.
I'm old. So if it's got an H at the beginning and A in the middle, it's
That's spelled just like Hannah. You're good.
Well, I didn't have a lot of Hannahs. I had several Hannahs over the years. You glad you gave me the microphone? Not now. We're pretty well done going through the IT stuff, right?
Yes.
And we have already figured out that I'm old. I started with a trash 80, was what it was, that you don't know what that is. And going through IT. And I don't mean this to you directly, but to everybody, since I've said here and in my previous life, IT is going to save us this. We're going to have less and less and less. And all I've seen from my previous career, as well as this one, that statement should not be getting said, folks. Because so far, nobody's come in, and maybe you're going to come in and show me, oh God, we've saved all these millions, but it's more people, more money, new system, they won't talk with each other. That idea that it's going to save us at the end seems to me like a con job that all of us have bought, that it's going to really make a difference because somebody decides to make sure they put something in a darn program, that it won't talk to the next program, and et cetera. So I'm just asking, with me sitting here, an old man now, you know what I'm thinking, and I've thought the last 10 years when everybody told me how this is going better. Trash 80, Apple IIe, then Microsoft, then iPads, and guess what happened every time we did that in schools? None of that crap talked to each other, and we had to start over again, new IT people, and I love you IT people. You're the only one with the information, the only one with knowledge, and the rest of us are sitting here holding a damn bag over it. Okay, sorry.
That was a good question.
Do you want us to respond to the question, or do you want to set up a meeting to talk about IT?
If somebody can find someplace that we did quit hiring people, and it saved, we got rid of Rusty Black because his computer system that cost $1 million was better than $200 million. If there is somebody out there that can show me where that's really worked, because I haven't seen it since 1984.
I will say a lot of the funding that's gone to IT is to make improvements both to how our citizens interact with the state and with how our employees interact and work for the government. Over the past
We hope.
20, 30 years, the systems that we used to put in place didn't get regular updates. They would just sit there until they became outdated and wait to be replaced, and we were doing it sort of piecemeal, one at a time.
I punched those cards at the university too.
Yeah, the new systems that we're moving to require licensing costs. They require keeping systems updated. You're not wrong that the IT costs, they have continued to go up. But we are making improvements as we replace these, both with how our data is transferred and stored, with how our employees are able to work for the state, with how our citizens are able to interact with the state. The goal being to make it more efficient, more customer service, we can't operate on outdated technology when you can't find developers or individuals that can even work on your old systems anymore. We do get stuck in a situation where if we don't spend money on IT, we move backwards, and over time the cost to catch up is sort of expensive all at the same time.
It's good, Hannah, kind of, but I've got a state employee that we overpaid, and now he's got W-2 that's wrong, and he's going to have to pay the IRS extra money. The state's wanting the full gross amount about it, even the amount that we sent to Social Security and to the federal government, and it falls down onto his fault. And I almost think if somebody had a piece of paper they could fill out a W-2 and hand it to him, we could fix it. So, I'm sorry.
Senator Nuremberg.
Thank you. Honestly, I want to echo Senator Black's comments. You know, as somebody who was born in 1984, I also struggle, honestly, to kind of see what we're doing and how it's improving efficiencies in state government, and especially for our citizens. You know, I remember when the rollout of the citizen portal, we were hearing all these wonderful things and how it was going to transform state government. And I think literally the description, right, is that this is going to be a world-class experience for citizens. World-class experience. And my first question to you all was, when we were going to roll this out, okay, is there an app on your phone where you can go and access state government? No. That's not a world-class experience, and I feel like if we're going to invest all of this money, then the vast majority of Missourians are paying their bills on their phone, and we don't even have an app for that. And so it's frustrating to me that we keep putting all this money in, and we're not really improving services and efficiencies for citizens. And that's what we get calls about all the time from our folks. And this isn't aimed at you, Hannah, I'm sorry you're in the hot seat there, but truly, as we look at these investments, it is a bit frustrating to see how we've rolled this out, and I would really like to see, you know, especially as we look at the ongoing maintenance, $27 million every year. What are we doing to help? You know, did we pull in the local municipalities who didn't have a system to pay their water bills online? Did we do all of those things? I just want some answers on that. And I know that's a big issue that I would like to follow up on offline on.
If I may comment. I think we are making it better. And I think a lot of the things that you're talking about now are the things that are visual on the surface. And if you back up 10 or 15 years ago, even as long as 2.5 years ago, we did not have the ability to have 100% redundancy, resiliency, and backup in our systems. The only way you're gonna see a benefit of those dollars is when things don't happen. It's like cost avoidance. What happens is, when you go year after year after year after year, and you do basically nothing in your data center, and you have a 20% backup, we're all at risk when that happens. And that's the situation that we were in 3 years ago. If we would have had ransomware, if we would have had somebody infiltrate the system, it would have been probably, my estimates that I got were 6 months to restore that data, and you would have got 20% of the data back. So for year after year after year, we were told, oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It was not fine. But you know what? Now it is. Today it is. And we spent probably $25 or $30 million just working on that foundation and that security piece. If you go back a couple of years ago, we were getting about 100,000 people trying to infiltrate the system. We call it a thwart. The last 2 months, we've had 18 billion. And those are the things you never hear about, because we're doing the job behind the scenes with security, and we're keeping the system safe. You can't turn on the news at night without hearing about an airline that's been infiltrated, or with another state that's been infiltrated, or people that have had spyware released inside their system. Knock on wood, the state of Missouri, because of the things we've done over the last 3 or 4 years, has been a damn good place to store your data. So a lot of these things you're not going to see on the surface. When you look at, you're talking about the citizen portal, and if we ask any questions, we did customer journey mapping. And with the customer journey mapping, we interviewed over 10,000 customers across the state of Missouri on what they would like to see in the new system. And those customer journey maps helped us design that system from the foundation up to make sure that we were giving the citizens what they wanted versus what we said they wanted. And relative to your question with the app, the reason there's not an app is because there's not a secure app for that device yet. When you access my.mo.gov, you can do it from your phone, and it is configured to where you can get it from your phone, and you can also get it on your iPad as well as your laptop computer. And we will work towards an app. It's just not available yet from the security standpoint that's required by the state. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are not visible to the naked eye because it's cost avoidance, because it's not happening. If we were to get an attack on our system, everyone in this room would say, why didn't we prepare ourselves for that attack? Well, we are prepared, and we're prepared to deal with it when it happens. And God forbid something like that happens, we're in a hell of a lot better place now than we were 3 to 5 years ago.
Okay. And we can definitely set up some follow-up meetings to talk about IT with anybody who's interested. Page 276, the Mansion Donations Authority section. The page before it is the Mansion Donations section that allows funding that's donated to the mansion to be used in support of the mansion. They also receive funding whenever they do mansion events. They have reservations on their website. Individuals pay into that fund. Over time, they have that amount of cash they have in that fund has built up to the point where they don't have enough authority to be able to spend it out. So on page 276, we're requesting additional authority out of that fund to allow the cash to be spent in support of the mansion. Page 286. So I will comment, this is the beginning of our FMDC, Facilities Management Design and Construction section. This works sort of similarly to employee benefits, where in House Bill 13, real estate, which we'll get to in a little bit, that's where all of the different funding sources that different state agencies pay in support of statewide real estate are collected through a transfer in House Bill 13, and then they're paid out of a single fund in House Bill 5. So these new decision item requests that you're seeing in House Bill 5 for FMDC, you'll see again when we get to House Bill 13. This first one is for DSS Family Support Division increased space needs. There is a request for additional FTE in the Department of Social Services budget for their Family Support Division. This is the associated space that they will need for those additional staff. Page 289 is the Diagnostic Forensic Campus. One of the ARPA projects was for the design and construction of a multi-agency laboratory campus. FMDC is going to need these 3 additional FTE for operation of that campus once it's up and running. Page 292 is the statewide warehouse complex. In FY24, FMDC received appropriation authority to buy or build a state-owned warehouse to consolidate all of the leased warehouse space in Cole County. They were leasing over 500,000 square feet of warehouse space, and so funding was approved for them to consolidate that into a state-owned warehouse. This request is for the staffing to run that warehouse now that we no longer have vendors that are operating all of the grounds, the snow removal, the inventory management, all of those pieces. Page 295 is OA Garage Fleet Management Building request. Another one of the projects that was approved was for a new fleet vehicle and maintenance building. When it's completed, this is the funding to pay the utilities and other costs that will be associated with that building. Page 297, Higginsville facility. The Department of Mental Health has been experiencing an acute shortage in their mental health residential inpatient placements. They proposed a relocation of some of their regional office staff from the habilitation centers in order to free up some beds. They received an appropriation in the FY24 budget. 2 of those 3 locations, they utilized that funding. One of them lapsed, and so they're requesting that that funding for Higginsville be reappropriated again as one-time funding. On page 300 is the DSS DYS Met Center relocation request. The Department of Social Services Division of Youth Services has been utilizing some space in the St. Louis area free of cost. Recently, that building was sold, and the new owner is requesting rent. So DYS is going to need additional funding for space for that program, whether they stay in the existing facility or find a different space for that program. Either way, they're going to be needing additional funding for that. Page 303. The Missouri State Highway Patrol uses towers across the state for communication purposes. Those tower leases are paid for through contracts with landowners. There are 7 leases that have large increases on properties owned by Amerin. FMDC is requesting funding to pay the increases in those costs to Amerin. Page, let's see. All right, on page 338 is general services surplus property proceeds. That's the core appropriation that allows them to cover the costs from property sales, auction fees, advertising, when they conduct surplus property sales. And then on page 343 is the transfer section. Basically, whenever they sell surplus property, they transfer the funding to whichever fund originally purchased it. So if they're selling property for mental health or social services, they'll transfer that funding back to that section or that fund that originally paid for it. On 348, they're requesting an increase. There's also a supplemental corresponding request. This is additional transfer authority for them to be able to sell surplus property and transfer the funding back to the fund that it originally came from. 362 is the core for the rebillable expenses. General services, whenever they provide services to state agencies, they purchase the raw materials, the paper, parts, fuel, postage, etc., and then they rebill that to state agencies. On 367, they're asking for an increase in rebillable authority. Some of that is due to inflation and postage and other things. They've seen increases in some of the costs for services that they're providing to state agencies and need the additional authority to be able to rebill for those. All right. That is the end of book 1. Page 402 from book 2 is the Children's Trust Fund in lieu of services. This is an idea that the Children's Trust Fund has been discussing with the state's managed care organizations. Essentially, they want to be more proactive with the way we're providing home visiting services to high-risk Medicaid-eligible populations. This would allow them to, the Children's Trust Fund, to bill Medicaid potentially for these services and then pass that funding to the home visiting organizations. The Children's Trust Fund has some dedicated other fund that they could utilize to pay an additional person to manage this out of their fund. So they will need the authority basically to hire someone and manage this in order to help these home visiting services in the state. Page 438. I'll back up actually, one sec. MOPERM's core section is on page 433. MOPERM provides property and liability coverage for public entities through a risk-sharing pool. They basically have a lot of members that are school districts, county governments, road districts, ambulance districts. All of the costs for their services are covered through claims. So this other fund that they pay this out of, all of that is, there's cash that is generated through the premiums that they charge to all of their members, and then they pay that out through this other authority. On page 438, they are requesting a new decision item. There is a core reduction on page 436 where they core reduced 1 FTE to offset this request that they're asking for on page 438. Essentially, the number of public entities that are participating in their program have increased significantly. They have over 1,000 public members at this point that are part of their organization. They need additional PS authority to be able to both hire a person and then also have some flexibility in their budget when they have, like, individuals retire and they have large leave payouts. They don't have any flexibility in their budget at this point to be able to cover that. On page 464, facility management, design, and construction. This is a St. Louis property consolidation request. FMDC is in the process of selling 5 properties in St. Louis for approximately $16.8 million. If you turn to page 465, there's a listing of the properties that they're selling and the approximate amount that's going to be deposited into general revenue for the sales of those properties. They are purchasing a building in order to consolidate the staffing in that area. Right now, we are financing for the purchase of that building. This request would allow general revenue to pay off that debt. We also have a supplemental request. We would only use one or the other, it's just depending on the timing. We would probably prefer to pay this off sooner and pay less. But we've requested it both in FY25 and FY26 just depending on the timing of when we get that done.
So are you telling me that the same request is in the supplemental,
Correct.
17.2?
Yes. And we would only use one of them.
Okay. Senator May.
And so this is for, again, I quite
Turn your
get,
microphone
I don't think I quite get it. So basically, I know Prince Hall closed, you know, the Wainwright building. So all of these buildings are being sold by the state? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Okay, and the 17.2 million is for,
The purchase of a new facility
okay, so we're
to
purchasing.
consolidate. Some of these buildings were most of them were very underutilized. For an example, the Wainwright building, I believe the occupancy of the Wainwright building was right around 804 people, I believe, and there was probably FTE count of that building of 400, and there was only about 180 to 200 that were working in the building. So a lot of these buildings were way underutilized, and just that building alone, if we were to update that building for our purposes, would have been a $23 million cost to update that building. The building appraised for about $6.2 million. We got $8.4 million for the Wainwright building, and worked with the city of St. Louis and Greater St. Louis to find a buyer for that was actually going to put, the plan is to put like commercial or shops on the lower level and housing on the top. So they're going to, that $23 million would have not been the same type of renovation that they're actually going to use for the building. So just in that building alone, $6.2 million or $8.2 million plus $23 million of renovation and $2.3 million a year for security and parking. Those are the kind of dollars that we're saving by consolidating into the Keithley building, which was not fully utilized in the city of St. Louis, the old post office, which we're moving some people into the old post office in St. Louis, and then there's some needs in the county, and we're also relocating some of the people from the city into the county
And the
building.
Keithley building, that's on Shoto? Is that the building on Shoto?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, and so we're just consolidating, and we're not buying a new building, we're consolidating people into.
We are, yes, ma'am, both. We are buying a new building out in the county area, just outside the city limits, but we're also relocating some of the people. Some of those departments need to be in the city and requested to stay in the city area because of the people that they serve. They will be staying in the city, but there's also some needs in the county. So we're looking at it holistically. It's not just a St. Louis project that we have going on here. We look at the major metropolitan areas like St. Louis, Springfield, Kansas City, some of the larger areas where we have buildings that are not fully utilized, and trying to either move them into an existing building that's owned by the state or to purchase a new piece of property in order to save money and be more efficient in the future.
Okay, so one question. So it says total state property that was sold was 16 million. That's what we got off that property?
Yes.
All those properties?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And so is the 17.2 an additional to that?
No, it's not. We'd like to request to use the 16 million to pay off the 17.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that takes us to the OA debt section. In terms of core changes, the payments that we have for principal and interest on outstanding debt, there are small core reductions in most of these sections just associated with reductions in those debt. Page 482 is state fair bond debt service. There are a couple of projects that when we get to House Bill 19 we'll be going through that essentially the state fair is requesting funding to build a couple of barns at the state fair for livestock events and shows. They should be revenue generating projects. They would like to bond for those projects and pay for it out of bond funds, and then this would be the general revenue to make payments on those bonds. The idea being that in several years when they are generating revenue that they would help general revenue to cover the cost of some of that bonded debt. Page 499 was one-time funding for the FIFA World Cup in FY25. Page 504 is a new decision item recommended by the governor to provide an additional $17.5 million in one-time funding for the FIFA World Cup. Page 521. Actually, let me go back. Page 506. This was the State Road Fund I-70 transfer. This has a core reduction associated with payments that have been made. Essentially, in the FY24 budget, there was funding appropriated for OA I-70. There was a transfer from general revenue into the OA I-70 project fund, and then we're transferring that funding to MoDOT as they're making payments on that. So there's a core reduction in this section just associated with payments that we've made to MoDOT so far for that project. Page 511, this section included one-time funding for the I-44. This was a new decision item in FY24, similar concept. There would be a transfer from general revenue to an OA I-44 fund, and then OA will transfer that funding to MoDOT as work is done on that project. Page 516 is where that funding, the appropriation authority from that I-44 fund into the MoDOT fund as they do those projects. Page 521, this section included one-time funding for the Sheriff's Association in FY25. Page 526.
This is one-time funding for the third time? Is that right?
On page 526,
Yeah.
this is a request for an additional $2.5 million in one-time funding for the Sheriff's retirement. That is
One-time
correct.
funding for the third time. Got it.
Yes. On page 528, this is the Cash Management Improvement Act section. There is a calculation that's done every year in December. Essentially, when we draw down federal funding from the federal government, there's usually a lag of a day or two before it gets actually paid out. Any funding that we make in interest on federal funding while it is sitting in a state fund, we have to do a calculation in December and pay that back to the federal government. On page 533, we are requesting an increase. There's both been an increase in federal funds coming into the state and an increase in the interest rate, and so we owe basically more money back to the feds than what we have appropriation authority to pay. There is also a supplemental request for this that you'll see when we do the supplemental. On page 535 is a new decision item. The governor recommended a transfer of $30 million from GR to budget stabilization funds to fully support all of the projects that are appropriated out of budget stabilization funds. On page 596 is the core for prosecutions for crimes in correctional institutional facilities. Essentially, this section allows us to reimburse counties for prosecuting crimes that occur in state prisons. In FY24 and 25, we had a new county that began requesting reimbursement. So we have a new decision item request on page 601 to allow us to also make reimbursements to Cole County that recently began requesting reimbursements under this appropriation. And the only other core change on 609, there was one-time funding for elected officials transition that's being core cut in this budget as that funding is no longer needed. And that is OA. Ready to go to statewide real estate? Or are there any questions?
Real estate.
Okay. Statewide real estate. This book. There is a summary on page 1 that lists square footage by leased facilities, state-owned facilities, and institutional facilities, along with the annual rent paid for leased facilities, state-owned facilities, and institutional facilities. There is a fund summary on page 5 that lists all of the different funds that are paying for space. On page 9, there's a similar summary. This is for all of the leased buildings by state agency. On page 22, there is a summary of all the state-owned building space by state agency. And on page 30, there is a summary of all the institutional space that's utilized by state agency. And moving past the core forms, the first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hannah, just a question. Is there somewhere, do we have a list somewhere of buildings that are maybe for sale or we're looking to sell now? Is that in here anywhere? Can I get that? Or is there such a thing?
So there are some buildings that we are considering putting up for sale that are vacant, underutilized type buildings that we need to get conveyance legislation for. So we have several pieces of conveyance legislation that we're going to be bringing forward this session. I don't know if you're interested in basically all of the properties that we're going to try to get conveyance legislation on, or anything that's underutilized, vacant. I don't know if we have a lot that's like up for sale right now, but maybe several that we're working towards that direction.
Okay.
If that's what
I'm
you
just
would
kind
like
of
to know.
curious of maybe number of properties and like approximate, I mean, do you have kind of an approximate dollar amount that those would bring in? And in the same case, like you talked about earlier, they'll go back to the original purchasing. That's where that money goes back to, is whoever purchased it to start with. Is that right?
So, yeah, if there was a specific federal or other fund that was used to purchase a building, it would go back to that fund. Most of our buildings would go back to general revenue. They're purchased either through general revenue or something we bonded with
Okay.
general revenue type payments. When those get sold, they go back to general revenue.
Okay. I'm interested in kind of seeing what's on the horizon as far as what we think is going to be coming up for sale. Maybe, and just maybe some kind of a rough idea of how many buildings that is and what the cost is.
Okay.
Or what the price, rough selling price would be.
Yeah, we can get you some information, and we might want to just have a meeting on that subject.
Sure.
Because we do have some things that we're maybe don't have a solid dollar figure on, but we're working towards.
Okay. All right. That'd
Yeah,
be great.
we can get you some information.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Also, I just want some more information on leasing. So it looks like, it's 60, this year we're asking for $61 million in rent. Do I have that number correct?
Yes, the annual rent on leased facilities is around 61 million.
Okay, and then also just, I'd like some data on how that's increased over time or what that looks like with previous years. And then also, is the only thing, like you mentioned the land owned by Ameren, asking us for a rent increase on their land. Is that the only, I'm looking here, I see that mentioned here. Are there other instances like that where we're paying to lease land? Like I see that from the Highway Patrol, those antennas. Are there other instances like that?
There's also the request that we have for Family Support Division space, where they were utilizing space before rent-free, and now they're asking the state to pay rent for the first time, and so we're needing additional funding for that. But, typically those come up as new decision item requests.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, as I mentioned before, in House Bill 13 is basically where they're consolidating all of the different funding sources and the cash, different funding types that they make the actual payments out of. And so all of these new decision items in House Bill 13 are ones that were either in House Bill 5 employee benefits or House Bill 50A. So the first one on 325 is associated with the pay plan. On page 328, there's the new decision item increase associated with the contribution rate for Mosers increasing from 28 to 30%. Page 331 is the new decision item associated with the increase in the Missouri Consolidated Healthcare Plan. Page 334 is the increase that is requested associated with the additional staffing for the Family Support Division that they are requesting in the FY26 budget. On page 337, this is the funding associated with the additional staffing for the statewide warehouse. On page 339, this is the funding associated with the staffing for the new health lab when that project is complete. On page 342, this is the funding associated with the staffing. Yes.
When's that project going to be complete? That's the $90 million.
The health lab?
Yeah. it's the crime lab, health lab combo, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, at the end of 2026, it's 157 million, is that correct? 154 million.
Okay. And so we think we need $1.5 million on, before this is actually complete for expensive equipment to build. Tell me what we're doing here. If it's not done yet, I'm confused as to why it is that we've got $1.5 million here getting ready to go that direction.
It will be done in 2026, so we will need this funding in FY26 as it's moving towards completion and as it's up and running.
So it's going to be done the end of 26?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, page 342. This is the funding that will be needed for the new building for the vehicle maintenance garage that's currently being completed. Page 344, again, the DMH Higginsville relocation funding. They requested funding for 3 locations. One of those lapsed, and they're requesting that be reappropriated again in FY26. Page 347 is the DSS DYS Met Center relocation. This is the funding that I mentioned earlier, where they were previously rent-free and now they're being charged rent as associated with a new building owner. And then 350 is the increase for the land antenna leases. That is statewide real estate. You want to go to House Bill 17. House Bill 17 includes all of the reappropriations for projects that were originally appropriated as capital improvement projects. Most of those originally showed up in House Bill 19, and then in House Bill 17 we reappropriate those as they move towards completion. On page, where are my page numbers? I don't know. The first section is DESI. The way this book is organized, there's a summary in front that lists each of the projects that we're requesting be reappropriated. There's a backup page for each of these projects that lists a little bit more about the project, when it was originally appropriated, how much it's been spent. There are 6 items being requested for DESI. The first 2 are projects that were added in FY23 for a building at the Special Acres State School to address some space needs for students. The second was for a new building at Autumn Hill State School. The rest of these were items that were added in FY24 for Hilliard Technical School, Cape Girardeau Technical School, Jeff City Learning Center, Center for School Safety. Page 8 is the Higher Education and Workforce Development section. There are 11 items. The majority of these were funded with Budget Stabilization Fund. The first 2 of them were originally appropriated in FY22. There are 4 projects originally appropriated from FY24 and 4 from FY25. These were for projects, a veterinary lab, the UMKC Medical School, one at MU Delta Soil Research Program. There are several different, Crowder College, Moberly College, Delta Greenhouse, several different projects that are being reappropriated. Page 21 is the MoDOT section. There are 2 requests. These were originally added in FY24. The first is a reappropriation of $28.3 million for low volume roads. The second is for improvements at a Warrensburg airport. Page 24 is the OA section. There are 12 items. Many of these are reappropriations for various repairs and projects at the Capitol. There are also some reappropriations on a couple of pass-through items for FIFA World Cup, as that funding wasn't all expended, or just to make sure we could get all of that funding out the door as needed over time. Page 38 is the agriculture section. There are a total of 7 items. One of these is construction of a director's house at the fair, construction of campgrounds, new meat laboratory center, vet hospital school. There are several different projects here for agriculture. Next is DNR section. There are a large number of reappropriations in the DNR section. There are a total of 74 requests. These are for parks throughout the state. The majority of these are with DNR specific funds or bond funds. In FY22, DNR bonded for a variety of revenue generating projects at state parks and campgrounds throughout the state. There are also a handful of GR funded projects for drinking water and water sewer infrastructure projects. Page 134 is the conservations. Yes. Is the conservation section. There are 5 items from Conservation Commission Fund for statewide conservation projects. Page 140 is DED section. There are 6 items from general revenue. The first 2 were added in FY24 for the design and construction at a South Loop Park and for a nonprofit innovation community center, Cortex, Missouri. There's also reappropriations from FY25 for Kansas City soccer parking lot, riverfront improvements, Springfield Ballpark, and a Route 66 monument. Page 147 is the Department of Public Safety section. There are 7 requests. These are associated with reappropriations of the Troop A headquarters, various upgrades at Highway Patrol headquarter projects, a couple of columbarium walls at Higginsville and Springfield, and then a Veterans Memorial. Page 156 is the National Guard section. There are 18 items. The majority are from their department-specific federal fund to allow them to capture federal funding for projects. There are also a variety of statewide projects and some from budget stabilization and GR. They have aircraft hangars, a readiness center, construction of a Bell Fountain Neighbors readiness center, one at Albany, and there's also a reappropriation for a land purchase and construction at Jefferson Barracks. Page 177 is the correction section. There are 2 items from general revenue. Both projects were added in FY24 for design and construction of a new Southwest Region Supervision Center and to install a chilled water loop at their Fulton Correctional Center. Page 180 is the Department of Mental Health section. There are a total of 10 items for construction of a warehouse at the SEMO Mental Health Center. There's also a reappropriation for the construction of the 200-bed psychiatric hospital, for construction of a residential facility for youth with behavioral health issues at Burrell, and for autism improvements at St. Louis County Autism Center. Department of Social Services, there are 20 items. Page 192. The majority of these are from GR. There's 1 from budget stabilization funds. These were added, most of these in FY25 for a variety of different nonprofits and hospitals and different projects throughout the state. That is reappropriations. House Bill 18 is our maintenance and repair. The majority of these are from the Facilities Maintenance Reserve Fund, which is funded by a constitutional transfer from general revenue to fund repairs and renovations at state facilities. There are also some specific federal and other funds throughout here as well that can be used for specific maintenance projects for specific agencies. On page 1 is DESI section. There are 9 requests for maintenance and repair. 10 of these are reappropriations. 9 of them are new. These are for DESI facilities statewide. Again, for all of these, there's a summary page and there's backup for each of these projects behind it. These are things typically like air conditioning replacements, roof replacements, playground equipment, things at different DESI facilities that are requiring maintenance and repair. Department of Revenue, page 24, there's 1 request for reappropriation from FY23 for a roof replacement project at the lottery headquarters building in Jeff City. Page 26, this section includes the constitutionally required transfer from GR to FMRF. This provides for the maintenance needs at buildings throughout the state. 1% of net general revenue collections from the immediately preceding fiscal year are required to be transferred from from GR to FMRF each year. Page 28 is the statewide section. There are 31 items. This section includes funding for responding to unplanned and emergency maintenance issues. This section also includes funding for surveys, appraisals, space utilization studies, energy conservation, or safety type projects. Page 65 is the OA section. There are 21 items. 10 of these are reappropriations. These are for renovations and repairs at a variety of state office buildings around the state. Page 90 is the disaster reimbursement section. This section would allow FMRF to be expended if there was a natural disaster or unforeseen event. If the state was to receive an insurance or federal payment, this section would allow us to utilize those funds for disaster recovery purposes. Page 92 is the agriculture section. There are a total of 11 items. 10 of these are reappropriations. These are for repairs and renovations at agricultural assets around the state. And then there's one new item to address various deferred maintenance issues at the State Fair in Sedalia. Page 105, is the Department of Natural Resources section. These requests are both from FMRF and some of DNR specific federal or other funds for repairs and renovations at geological survey assets and state parks throughout the state. Page 179 is the conservation section. There are 8 requests, 7 of them are reappropriations. These are from the Conservation Commission Fund for maintenance and repair at conservation assets around the state. Page 189 is the Department of Labor section. There are 3 requests for critical maintenance and repair at Doler assets around the state. Page 193 is the Department of Public Safety section. There are 35 requests. The majority of these are from the State Highway and Transportation Fund. These are for highway patrol assets around the state as well as for the Veterans Commission. Page 234 is the National Guard section. There are 16 items from FMRF as well as some of the National Guard's federal funds to allow for repairs and renovations at National Guard facilities around the state. These are for their parking lots, readiness centers, maintenance shops, aviation facilities, warehouses, training sites, etc. Department of Corrections is on page 253. There are 26 items from FMRF for repairs and renovations at correctional facilities throughout the state. The Department of Mental Health is on page 284. There are 19 requests. The majority are from FMRF. There are a couple of reappropriations that are from DMH bond proceeds funds. These are for repairs and renovations at DMH facilities statewide. Page 307 is the Department of Social Services section. There are 13 items. The majority are from FMRF, although there are also some from DSS's specific federal funds for a variety of repairs and renovations at DSS facilities statewide. Again, these are things like HVAC, boiler replacements, parking lot repairs, etc. And then that takes us to House Bill 19, capital improvements. These are new construction projects that are being requested this year. Page 1 is the Department of Higher Ed and Workforce Development. There is a request for one new project. This is funding for a radioisotope center. The U.S. Department of Energy's isotope program is collaborating with the University of Missouri's Research Center. They would
You know what the actual total
total
price
cost
tag-
of this
yeah,
is? I don't.
Yeah. All right, I'll ask Mizzou. Thanks.
Yeah, I do need to find that out. All right, page 3. This is the OA section. There are 2 requests. The first is from general revenue for restoration and preservation of the MSP. There was a similar request last year that did not end up being funded. We're requesting that again this year. It would essentially all of the buildings on that site are crumbling. The site, we either will need to invest in it if we're going to continue to allow that piece of history to be preserved, or over time it's going to deteriorate. As those buildings aren't heated or air conditioned, they get hit by tornadoes, lose windows. Over time they're deteriorating. So it's one of the oldest prisons. As tourism, from a tourism perspective, there are a lot of individuals that come and see that. If we don't invest in it, we are going to lose it.
Are there $52 million worth of individuals that tour that?
So it would take probably a long time to get to 52 million, but if we do invest this funding, it will cover the costs of maintaining it long term. So there will be, obviously, there are some costs associated with heating it, cooling it, those types of things. If we do invest in this, it is estimated that it will generate enough revenue to cover the ongoing costs of keeping that up going. So it's sort of a one-time investment in preserving something that, if if it's historically significant that enough that we want to preserve it, we basically have to make that decision. And then the second request is for Keithley State Parking. Essentially, there is a parking lot that is near the Keithley State office building that we're currently leasing. The landlord has offered to sell us that property. It would make a lot better sense for us to go ahead and purchase it than to continue leasing it, and we would have a request to be able to purchase that parking lot. Page 6 is the agriculture section. As I mentioned before, there are 2 requests here. These are for a livestock barn and an arena stalling barn at the state fair. This would allow the state fair to be able to hold livestock events. They're proposing bonding for these projects, and then currently the request is for general revenue to pay on those bonds, but as they receive funding from these events, that they could use that funding to help cover the cost of the debt service on these bonds.
Hannah, so we did the state fair arena as well, and how much was that? 30?
50?
50, I think the total was 54 something.
54 million
54
from the
million
state?
for everything,
50,
all in. on the
54
state.
million for the state fair arena.
Okay, and then now we have the support barn, the stalling barn, and then did you mention something about the director's house as well? And how much is that house?
400,000.
And that's what you're asking from the state, 400,000 for a house?
That was a reappropriation, so that's a project that was appropriated in a previous year that
Okay.
they're currently working on.
Okay, just keeping track of what's going to the state fair. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if I may add, there's about $62 million worth of work proposed for the fairgrounds at Sedalia, and everywhere from restrooms, ceilings that are leaking, roofs that are falling in. I believe there's a residence on the property right now that this home would take the place of. So there's a lot of work going on out there other than just the arena for about a total of $62 million, I believe.
Okay. Page 9 is the DNR section. There are 9 requests. Several of these are from DNR-specific federal and other funds for statewide projects. These cover things like real estate transaction costs, and they allow donated funds to be spent on state park construction. They are also requesting on page 11 funding for additional square footage at their current core library that is off of the main office from their geological survey. This would allow for 21,000 square feet of warehouse space, 3,000 square feet of office space, new lighted parking areas, a backup generator, and utilities. On page 18 and 19, there are 2 other new requests. One of them is for Maryland Park Lake District floodplain. It's a water infrastructure project at the Maryland Park Lake District at Maryland Heights to address floodplain issues and stormwater management. And then on 19, there is a request for Jordan Creek Bridge to build a bridge over Main Street in Springfield as part of the Jordan Creek Renewal Project. Much of that area is in a floodplain. Page 20 is the conservation section. This item requests authority for the conservation to spend their Conservation Commission funds on construction projects statewide at conservation assets. Page 22 is the Department of Public Safety section. There are 3 items. The first 2 are from state highway funds to construct a new crime lab at Troop E, and then a building addition at Lee Summit Troop A, and a child care facility for the City of St. Louis Police Department. Page.
So, hold on, just so I'm clear, we've got, and I actually asked, I think I asked Dan Hogg about this last week, but we've got a crime lab under construction here in Jeff City, right? The collaboration between the health lab and the crime lab, right? And then we also have a request in here for about $13 million for another crime lab in Troop E, right? Is it a renovation of that crime lab? It's what? It's new construction?
Their current Troop E crime lab in Cape Girardeau is a leased building. they're asking for funding to construct a building that would be state-owned.
Got it.
Page 26. Page 26 is the National Guard section. There are 3 items. The first one is to allow the National Guard to accept federal funds that may be available for statewide construction projects. There is also funding for a Jefferson Barracks Readiness Center. That request is listed out on page 28. Essentially, they have a vacant building that's on their property that they would like to renovate to be able to utilize as they're in need of additional space. And then on page 29, there is a request for purchasing and installing an emergency generator at their aviation center in Springfield. Page 30 is the Department of Mental Health section. There is one new request. This is associated with the 200 the 200-bed mental health hospital. When it was being reappropriated, they reappropriated the funding differently than how it was originally appropriated. There was a decrease in one of the other funds and then an increase in a different fund, and you can't appropriate an increase in a reappropriations bill. So this is a request in House Bill 19 to correct that. On page 32 is the Department of Social Services section. This is additional funding needed to move forward with the demolition of a building at Camp Avery and construction of a replacement. Essentially, there was a reappropriation for a Camp Avery project. They're needing a little bit more space on the building that they're building, and so this is the increase they're asking for on a project that they currently have appropriated as a reappropriation. And then on page 34 is the judiciary section. This section has one request for restoration at the Supreme Court building. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. They've got deterioration to walls, woodwork, skylights. They're needing this funding to be able to restore the library and fix all of that damage. So that completes House Bill 19, unless there are questions.
Any other questions on the $750 million CI bill, of which about $649 million of it is general revenue? Doesn't look like it. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that will conclude the hearing for today. Appreciate OA being here. Tomorrow we've got the Attorney General and I think DED. So, see everybody tomorrow.